let's cross to Ulverston and Russell Holden. You're very welcome, Russell. Great to have you with us. I saw your story pop up. I think it came into our inbox and it just looked really interesting. So first of all, just come off mute, Russell, and just tell us a bit about yourself and what it is you do.
Well, I'm a graphic designer, but several years ago, I was asked to produce a book. Now, I'd had some experience doing that, and so I had a meeting with the chap and sort of managed his expectations, see exactly what he wanted to achieve, and it sort of went from there. And we produced that book. That book was a history of the airfield in Millom, which during the war was a military airfield, but is now the prison. And the book was entitled "Oh Mother, It's a Lovely Place," and we both enjoyed the experience, both myself and the author, and so that's sort of basically where it started. And the word got out. He spoke to other authors, and since then he's done several books himself. So that's sort of how it started, really.
Okay, so we're getting into the realms here of what they call self-publishing, which I mean, I can see a few writers on the call this morning, and it's one of these sort of things, one of these phrases that has taken off, I'd say, in the last, I don't know, 10 years or something, but you know far more about it than I do, Russell. Tell us a bit more about what that phrase means, self-publishing.
Yeah, I think in the olden days it used to be called vanity publishing, but I do really hate that word because I don't think there's anything vain about it at all. So basically it is someone who has written a book, and rather than sending it to a traditional publisher and sort of getting the rejection letters and having to wait for a long time before they get anyone to even have a look at it, they bite the bullet and fund it themselves, and then take on the responsibility of getting it produced, getting it printed, and then getting it marketed and getting it out into the wide world themselves.
And you kind of take the pain out of that for people. Is that fair?
Well, that's right. Yeah. So that's what I found is that people, the first hurdle is getting it into looking like a professional book, getting the layout sorted out, designing the page designs, the layouts, the images, getting it in there, whether they need them scanning or quite often it's sort of laying out the images, and then a nice cover design as well. So that's a sort of first hurdle. But then, like I said, I sort of manage these expectations. So we always have a meeting with people and say, look, going forward, that this is something you're going to have to run with. That you're going to have to sort of market and get out and speak to people, get it into bookshops and it's something that you haven't got the backup of a big sort of publishing house, but most people they're not looking for the next bestseller. They're looking for this project that they've worked on for years, a sort of a personal journey, or a local history book, or a specialist niche subject, and they just want to sort of get that book out there, and they're happy to sell a couple of hundred copies, and sort of as a hobby, really.
And you've written a couple of books yourself, haven't you? And presumably you've used your own processes so you've kind of gone through the experience yourself as a writer. Just tell us about the two books you've written.
Yeah, the first book back in 2004, I developed a tumor on my hearing nerve. That's where you hear from, on my hearing nerve, and it's called an acoustic neuroma. And so I wrote about the journey at the time that I had, and I put it into sort of a blog form. But then about 10 years ago, I decided to put it into a book form as well, and so wrote about the whole experience from diagnosis to the operation, and then later on I had a bone anchored hearing aid for a while, because I'm totally deaf in this ear now. And so I just wrote about that experience. I don't think I've got a copy of the book, but I said, oh yeah, here it is. Yeah, so that was it. My acoustic nemesis. And then the other one was just it was just a lockdown project because I've over the years I've owned probably about 30 cars, and so I did a little on my life in cars. Both available on Amazon, not bestsellers. I think I might sell maybe one a month.
And with your background in graphic design, would you sort of say you've set up this organization? I think Pixel Tweaks is the website, which probably will pop into chat in due course. Did you sort of feel that actually because of the skills that you had, you could offer these, obviously presumably for a fee, to others who, as you say, are sort of, they've got a script, but they don't know what to do next. They don't know how to get it onto Amazon. They don't know how to do a cover. They don't know how to sort of, make the thing, etc., etc. That's something that you've discovered on how to do yourself, and therefore you felt you could share that awareness and those skills with other people.
Yeah, that's right. And again, it's been a journey. So the first time I did it, it was it took quite a while to sort of structure that, and it was a bit of a learning curve with finding printers and printers. High street printers are brilliant, but they do have minimum runs. And so a lot of people were finding that, well, actually, I can't afford to buy 1,000 books straight off. And then we discovered the sort of print on demand companies. So you've got a company called Ingram Spark, and then there's also Amazon KDP, who will print your books on demand. So you don't have to have a large run. You can order one book if you like, and that again has opened the opened the opportunities really for to make it a lot more affordable for people to do this.
And there's all sorts of Cumbrian authors that you've worked with, isn't there, in that 200 book run?
Yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah. I think the majority of Cumbrian authors. Yeah. So
I'm looking at the list here. So you've worked with Kerry Derbyshire, Kim Moore, and also interestingly, I saw that you've worked on several books with John Fox and Sue Gill from Welfare State International, because they're obviously in your part of the world as well, aren't they?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I've done several books for John and Sue. The latest one was there's this one they did one called 80 something, which they did for a Leeds art project back in spring, and they I think they sort of they read portions of it recently on a tour as well. But it's always nice working with John and Sue. Their energy is fantastic.
And just sort of final one from me, really, for the moment. If anyone's got any questions, just put your hand up or stick something into chat. As far as finances are concerned, Russell, let's say I've got a manuscript for a novel. I haven't, by the way, but let's just say I did have. How much would I have to sort of be thinking that I need to have in my bank account to kind of go through a process whereby I could produce, I don't know, 200 copies of my novel, going through the process of self-publishing, perhaps with your assistance? How much do I need to be thinking about?
I would say, per book, you probably, again, it depends. If it's just a sort of a paperback novel or something. So say something like this. So this is what is this? 250 pages. Something like this it would cost around about £2, something like this, to actually buy print on demand, and then you'd sell it for whatever, for £7-8, something like that. And so it depends how many copies you want to actually purchase straight away.
Yeah.
My fees, it's usually around about sort of the £500 mark for a novel, that kind of thing. And again, with using supply print on demand with this Ingram Spark, let's say you can order your books on demand, but also they broadcast them into the retail system, and so they're also automatically available on Amazon and sort of Waterstones, and not in the Waterstones shop, but on the Waterstones website and all this kind of thing. So that makes it a little bit more easier to sort of get your books out there into the system.
Yeah.
And you have the opportunity as well, or the option to buy a stock of books and sell them, on launches and
Yeah, and then obviously it'd be up to me to contact independent booksellers. So for my sins, I worked in a bookshop for 3 years in London, in Waterstones in Kensington. So one of my jobs was to see, I used to run the big travel section there, and I'd have to see the reps and do deals with them. And so I know how difficult it can be to get them into the big chains. And obviously and that can be a massive, great door that opens.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But as far as distribution is concerned, it would then be sort of the onus would be on my shoulders to get it around and try and, as you say, do deals, maybe try and organise launches, readings, etc., in
exactly.
In
that's it. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Amy's got a hand up. Amy, off you go.
Hi, Russell.
Hiya.
Wondered if there was any particular challenges to do with artists producing, like, an artist book. I've actually just had an artist that I know recently asking if she knew of anyone that would publish books, but I'm thinking of things that were maybe, you might get photographers wanting to have a book that was mainly images, or you might have artists wanting to produce something that had maybe a mix of kind of high quality images with words, unusual layouts maybe. So I just wondered, like, do you publish many artist books? And if you do, are there any particular challenges with doing that?
Yeah. I mean, artist books. I've done books with art. I mean, sort of children's books. So with sort of high quality art in it and or whatever, that kind of thing. It's reproduction more than anything, and if it depends what kind of print quality is required, because obviously with photography, a photography book or a high quality art book, you want to have a really good reproduction on it, which then would mean you'd have to go to the high street printers and get you'd have a minimum run with that. So you'd have to sort of aim your budget a lot higher to get the good reproduction of the sort of the quality of the images, etc.
But there's certainly picture books that you've done in the past that you just held up an example of one there. Matthew asks, Russell, do you design the book covers yourself?
I do, yes. Yeah.
So how do you go about designing a book cover? I have no idea where you'd start with that.
I would do, first of all, sort of get feedback from the author, and then I find it's an organic process. So someone will say to me, right, here's my book. What are you going to do for the cover? And I go, I don't know. I'll look through your book, and as I'm producing it, ideas will pop up, and I always find it as an organic sort of process, and then present 2 or 3 alternatives for the cover, get a bit of feedback, and sort of do it that way, really.
Does that answer your question, Matthew? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you Amy says, do you read all the books that you publish? What a great question.
I must confess I don't. No. I do as I'm going through the book, that I obviously get I read it and get the gist of it, but I don't sit down and read the books. Sorry.
Unless they're about cars.
Yes.
So with your car book, for example, so again, I think they say everyone's got a book in themselves, don't they? And sometimes people want to write stuff that is about their life, or sort of biographical, etc., etc. So with your book, with your car book as an example, have you got images from your 30 cars that you're going to get into the book? Is it kind of reflections of stories of things that happened to you while you've had the cars, why you bought the cars? Is it all those sort of things combined?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it was sort of what was happening at the time, the age I was at, and why we had that particular car and that kind of thing. All the images are ones that I'd sort of found and sourced from my own collection. But that's the other interesting point is using photographs, because again, a lot of people will come to me and they'll say, yeah, I've got this brilliant book. I found all the photographs on Google Images, and I go, oh, no. Because again, that's something that I sort of really must stress with people, that they can't just find a photograph on Google Images.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be a copyright free, or it has to be royalty free, or it has to be they have to have permission to use it, sort of thing. So that's something else that that I always need to sort of stress with people.
Yeah, and I'll come to your question in a second, Henry, or what you just put in chat there in a second. So that's really interesting. But Russell, you know, with books, I know you probably wouldn't call yourself a publisher, you know, in other words, you're not necessarily taking editorial control. You just said, you know, you don't read all the books, but do people need to sort of have the audience in mind when they write a book? You know, because often I can see that people could fall into the trap of, well, I've written this book, it's really interesting for me, but actually no one else cares about it. So I'm sure your 30 cars isn't like that, but you know, an extreme example of that is, well, the cars might be interesting to you, but no one else cares about your cars. So is part of like a successful book just the basics of thinking about who else might find this interesting, whatever I'm doing? Well,
I think that's it. That is why it's a lot of these are such a niche.
Yeah,
a niche book. I did a book which was the history of the Welsh pews, which is very niche. But
talking about niche,
the chap sold a couple of hundred copies, and I think that's it. It's that's what I mean. That's what I sort of really like about these projects, is the enthusiasm that people have for these really sort of niche subjects, and for these little passion projects, or a local history, and it's really nice to share that enthusiasm while I'm working on the project, and then sort of go back out of it afterwards. But that's the sort of and I know you're coming from, but again, lots of these people, they're not after the next bestseller, they're just after getting the passion out there.
Right, Dickie, I'm going to get your story out of you as well in a second, but Helen, tell us about the book that you've talked about in chat there, an artist book through Issue.
I did an art project where I followed Kurt Schwitter's route of exile from Nazi Germany to Norway and then to the Lake District, and I kept a blog, and it was so popular that a couple of people said, you know, why don't you publish it? So I did, and it needed to be very good quality images, because there were photographs I'd taken en route, and I published it through Issue, which a lot of artists have used. I don't know if it's still the fashionable thing to do at the moment, but 10 years ago it was. A lot of artists collectives and students groups used it to publish catalogues of their exhibitions, because basically you don't have to print it until somebody is willing to pay for it. So I've put a link in the chat and it just came up as my book, so you've got my book, but you can see what good quality it is. But it works out at about £80 a copy, and I did it as a limited edition, and I think I've sold 10, you know. But you get a PDF. You get a PDF that you can send to people for free. So that it's worth it for that. And you design it yourself. That's the other thing. I mean, the layout is all in the app. It's an app that you download, and then it's you put in your own text and your own photographs and move it around, and it's very easy.
You put a link into chat there as well, Helen. Dickie, tell us about your 2 books, and you said quite hard work but worthwhile. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm a huge Morrissey fan, so that's where my kind of passion lies in terms of music. And so I self-published a book called the Day I Met Morrissey, which is about fans who've met Morrissey because they see it as some kind of like religious experience, meeting their hero. So the first book was really just a collection of meetings with Morrissey, and illustrated. It's a lot of photographs, but lots of stories, and fans who met him in airport lounges or by the pick and mix at Woolworths or what have you. But I self-published it. I knew a designer who I worked with. I knew a printer. Quite a heavy kind of financial outlay in the beginning, a big risk. So this was 2009, probably before kind of Twitter and social media really took off, maybe on the kind of cusp of that, the early days of that. So, but yeah, it went well. I mean, it was became a Waterstones most recommended book. It was Piccadilly Records top 10 music book of the year. Morrissey liked it. I'd literally go around to Morrissey gigs. I'd go to the gig, I'd hide a stash of books outside, and then at the end of the gig, I'd basically just be flogging the books. But I mean, there was like some like nights where I made, I think outside the Manchester Apollo 2009, it was his 50th birthday show. I made 750 quid, and I was like, oh my god, if you've got like a captive audience, and you've got a market, and even if it is a bit niche, you can do all right. I mean, so obviously last week I was in America at Morrissey gigs, and again I was getting loads of content of pictures and videos, but a few little links to my website to the books. And then when I came home, I had a load of book orders to send out. So I've definitely got a bit of a market there in terms of Morrissey stuff. And
so it's again, it's that niche market that you've found.
But that's just I mentioned for Russell. I mean, no, that's it's really interesting what you do, and it's fantastic. You've given a kind of outlet to, authors who maybe otherwise might kind of struggle because the kind of books we sell aren't going to be ever going to sell like 1 million copies, but you're helping authors get their work out there and giving them opportunities. So it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can't believe you didn't come to me, Dickie, for the moment when I met Morrissey, when I sold him some books in a bookshop in London, when I was working in that very bookshop that I talked about. He bought, true to form, he bought an Elvis Presley picture book, and he bought Kenneth Williams' diaries. And it was great.
Morrissey.
Yeah, exactly. So, quintessential Morrissey. But anyway, well done, Dickie. And that's a fantastic, achievement. And, all that. And I remember that book. I mean, it's still kicking around, obviously, but I definitely remember the book coming out. And it's a great thing. Lovely.
Yeah, I've not got many left. I've got about 60 left.
It's a bit like having a celebrity on this call, isn't it, with Dickie? He's just been to New York. He's written this best-selling book. It's amazing. It's great to have you here. One last thing from Russell, then we'll move on. Russell, so 3 top tips from someone who's wanting to self-publish a book. What would you say to them?
I would say, first of all, get it proofed and edited, and then proofed and proofed again. Just get it 100% or 99 point whatever percent ready before you actually go down that route. Secondly, have a think about what kind of format, how you want it presenting, and then don't do it unless you are going to actually get out there and sell it yourself, or do some marketing, or have some kind of way that you can actually promote it or get it out there. And
as Joe says, get an editor. I think that's wise words as well. Get a second pair of eyes or third pair of eyes to look at.
Yes, definitely. Yes, yeah.
And as Derek says, if Nadine Dorries can sell her books, then perhaps we've all got a chance. Russell, that's been really interesting. Thank you ever so much. Russell's organisation is called Pixel Tweaks. I'm not sure whether that's been put into chat or not, but have a look at the website, and it's full of all sorts of stuff. Amy's nodding her head, so it's in there. Look out for the car book. And all the other ones as well. Russell, I mean, I know a lot of your books have been shortlisted for the Lakeland Book of the Year Awards as well. So there's a real pedigree of stuff there. So congratulations. I hope it continues in the way that you want it to.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on this morning. And by the way, isn't it lovely watching Lorna Singleton make art during this call? I don't know if anyone's watching. She's doing her stuff in her workshop, I suspect. And it's, what are you making, Lorna? Come off mute and tell us what you're making.
A basket.
Look at that.
Oh, cute.
That is.
Well, I've actually just been doing this one.
There you go. Christmas is just around the corner, everybody. Beautiful. Well, don't let us disturb you, Lorna. It's fantastic. It's great. I just enjoying watching you do that in the corner of my eye. Right. Thank you, Russell. Stick around. So we're going to cross now to Kendall and Melanie, who has got a really interesting art project on the go at the moment. And it has also got a story to tell about publishing a book. It's amazing what things happen on these calls. So Melanie, tell us your story and what you're up to.
Okay, well, I will stick to the walking project and I won't tell you about my book because I will get distracted.
Okay.
But we'll see.
And Amy will pull up your slides.
Oh, yeah, I do have slides. Well, in the meantime, so it's a walking project. Oh, those are my slides.
Here we go.
Oh, it doesn't work as, why has it got grey? Okay. Yeah, so the walk, it's called PS Walks. It's co-created and it's worldwide and it's become a walking chain. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, this is just a little bit of background. I'm not from Cumbria. I've lived here now for 2 years, and my introduction to art and culture in Cumbria was through the Artful Ways project. In my practice, I do a lot of walking. I do correspondence, so mail art that came out of lockdown, really. Not the walking, but the correspondence. And so my Artful Ways project ended up being a walk, an international walk by correspondence. I walked in Kendal, someone walked in Frankfurt. We mailed the walks to each other and did them in a different country. But that was also my introduction to Kakan. I call it Kakan, apparently no one else does. And that's what arts and culture is for me. So that's just me saying hello. And can you go to the next slide then, please? So the PS Walks is not like that. That's a move on. And this is where my thinking kind of began. I've spent a lot of this year happily meeting up with some of the people that I'd been doing correspondence art with over the last 3 or 4 years now. And 2 of those meetings, one was in Edinburgh in September, and then one was at the beginning of October in the Keswick Museum. So in Edinburgh, I met up with someone from France, and in Keswick, I met up with someone from Canada. And they wanted to do more things with me, and I wanted to do more things with them. And I've got quite a big international network, and it's very time consuming. And I can't give the kind of attention that I want to with that. And I wanted to do a lot of walking, these people walking, and I started thinking. So this is a picture of my thinking. It's literally, much of my work is kind of embodied. So this is literally my foot crushing blackberries from the garden onto paper while I was thinking. I'm thinking on my feet all the time. I'm quite spontaneous. Things develop organically. And that piece has formed part of a body of work that's emerging for me out of these walks. Can you go to the next slide, please? I'll go through the slides. I'll talk you through them. And then if anyone has any questions, or if they do, just interrupt me. So in Keswick, Catherine, who I met up with in the Keswick Museum on National Poetry Day, gave me these 6 scarves. I'm wearing one of them. They're not sewn together. That's just me visually representing what this walk is, how I'm envisaging it and what it might become. So there's 6 scarves. These are a form of co-creative art as well, probably, because these scarves, Catherine made them as a response to a group project that we had been working on, that I initiated at the end of the summer. And each of those scarves, and Catherine has a big story about it. I think she dyed them, and she's historically a textile artist, she's a bookbinder. But each of those scarves has got the letter S knitted into it in Braille. And that came out of a project. She's gave those scarves to me, said, let's see what you do. So this is kind of what I'm doing. Is there anything else to tell you about that? No. So could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is what the walk became. It's PS walks, and what PS means, or where it comes from in my head, is the prompts are all postcard size, so PS. Also, it's a postscript, PS. A postscript is an afterthought. All of this has come kind of as an afterthought, but all of the prompts are linked. So what has happened, there's a group of 6 of us that I got together, and I said, let's start it on a Wednesday. And it started off with, who wants to do a little walking project? Let's see what happens. So I thought, well, we'll do one walk and then everyone will go, no, let's not do any more. Well, no, it's become much more and everyone's doing them. And we're on week 5 at the moment, and week 6 is planned. So I started it off. I made a postcard with a prompt on, which is basically a collage of just all sorts of things made from ephemeral artifacts that I had from those visits to Edinburgh and Keswick. So I did that. Then I posted it on Instagram in a chat to the group, and throughout that week they go in their own place and walk. Then the next week someone else does a postcard prompt and it links back to the previous weeks, and so on and so on. So we've established a pattern. So it usually starts in Tokyo. Rico gets up and goes for a 5 a.m. walk, and we tend to get a photo sent of a Tokyo skyline at 5 a.m. The next one tends to be me, and I try and slot the walk. I have only walked in Kendal. I mean, it's so tempting, I could go off and do a hike, but I'm just slotting them into my kind of everyday. And I go for a walk when it's not raining in Kendal on a Wednesday. Then Catherine goes and walks in Canada, and well, she sees some stuff that's quite different to what I see. Then next it's usually Christine in Belgium, and she's usually in some sort of a garden. Martine goes to all sorts of different parks and things down in the south of France, and then Annie in Scotland fits things in wherever she can. Sometimes she takes us to the sea, sometimes she takes us to orchards. So that is those people. Do you want to go to the next slide? Okay, so here, these are some photos that people would have sent from some of the walks. That first walk, and so the reason that I thank you, Tom, for inviting me to talk about this, but the reason that I suggested talking about it maybe in the first place was because that first walk, they're numbered PS1, that's just the numbering for the walks. PS1 started by chance on the 11th of October, Wednesday, the 11th of October, which is when Kakan was having the co-creation event in Kendal. So my walk, so Tokyo woke up and we were all excited, even I was up at 5 a.m. And she walked, and then I got a picture of a tree from southern France, and then thankfully it wasn't raining. I walked early, I walked into Kendal, I did all the walk, and then I paused it halfway to go to the co-creation event, and then I finished it. So, that event was very much embedded in the history of this walk by chance. But it seems so appropriate. Anyway, so those are some of the different kinds of pictures. So you can see, like in Japan, there, Noriko's gone off on a walk and it's like, oh, look at this light that I found on the street. Up there, Catherine, on the other hand, has got snow. You know, Noriko's in the middle of the day. At that time, it was about 24 degrees Celsius in Tokyo. And whereas Catherine over in Saskatchewan, in the center of Canada, has got snow. And she's going off tracking coyote, looking for clues of where coyotes are. You see Fading Pink from a Belgian garden. Annie sets up networks of apple orchards around Edinburgh. So she's found a fallen apple. You can see there Martine's gone on a dog walk. You might not be able to see it that clearly, but you know, you can see the different sort of environment that's there in southern France compared to me in Kendal. That walk is en route to the co-creation walk. Could you move to the next slide, please? Okay, so we're on PS5 this week, next week's PS6. And while all of this was happening, you know, this idea of the chain was going through my head. And people wanted to carry on doing it. And I know some other people were like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because I haven't put this out in public anywhere. I mean, it's quite low key. There's no algorithms involved. There's no hashtag. There's been no public announcement, but that might change. The whole idea is kind of, and the whole ethos, I suppose, of much of what I do is ground roots, integrity, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Sounds, but I really do mean that. So a new set has been set up that will start on the 22nd of November. And that's 6 new, I'm calling them score makers, in walking art and psychogeography and fluxus history and everything. There would often be an event score. And a score is a few lines that sort of give you guidelines, instructions. So they're not necessarily that. The postcards, it's easier for a lot of other people because not everyone, most people involved in these are not walking artists. You know, walking artists who use walking as their art form, and that is their practice. Not all of these people are, you know, there's all sorts of different kinds of artists, hobbyists. But so the next set are from South Africa, Italy, Brazil, India, Germany, and Mexico. We've got academics involved, walking artists, textile artists, sketchbookers, bookbinders, trash poets, writers, poets, all sorts. Yeah, so that will follow the same kind of format. This time, though, there's kind of going to be possibly 12 walkers because the 6 people who'd already been walking these ones, they want to carry on with the project. They might not stick to walking all 6. I'm going to try and walk all 6 more, and I think some other people will. Interestingly, the 22nd of November is the same day that Somewhere Now Here, who ran the Artful Ways project, they've got their environmental workshop on that day. So what I often, in terms of working with correspondence, is it's not just mail art. I look at meaningful coincidences and those sorts of things. So that start with date, I mean, it's by chance, but it works.
It was meant to be. Harriet and Rob doing their thing. Absolutely, it's meant to be, isn't it?
Yep, exactly, exactly. And sometimes, how do you make a decision? Well, maybe you just look, and when all the things slot, you go, yeah, do it. So I created an Eventbrite thing. It's private, so you can only do it if you've got the link. I thought that there might be some people who are part of CACAN who might like to become part of this chain. The idea for this second series is just that they would walk it. No one has to make a prompt because I've already got my 6 score makers set up. But if people want to walk alongside, I'll send them the prompts via email. But it's a way to kind of start up a conversation and a way to walk. And I'm not too sure how it would work, but I've set that up so we can see what happens. Yeah, shall I be quiet now? And then you
yeah,
can
no, that's
ask me.
what an interesting, imaginative, ambitious project, Melanie. And as Lavinia's put there in chat, what a lovely idea. Peter says, do you all walk?
Sorry, I haven't read the chat, so I don't know.
All right,
what
so I'm just telling you what
asked.
it says. It's fine. Peter says, do you all walk on the same day and always in the same order, or is it just when you can, as long as it's in order?
It's just when you can, and it doesn't even have to be in order. I just noticed that was happening. There's really no rules. The idea is to have fun. It started off as just a fun kind of thing. Some people, taking part of it, it's like, why do the walk? And there's a long history about walking, and the benefits, for creativity, mental health, blah, 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 blah. There's walking as an art form that lots of people draw on psychogeography. It's very much about like relational practice. But so these walks, and well, particularly because it's me, it's experimental and organic. That's just what happens when it is with me. But other people have said they like doing it because it gets them walking. It's very easy to not go for a walk. And these, you don't have to go for a hike. You don't have to, but you do have to think, because one of the prompts might just be a picture. And you're like, oh, okay, where do I start? I've got a picture of a rose. What do I do? Other ones might be a map, a very detailed map from another country. You don't have roads that look like that or have those names. So you do have to think. It dislocates you a little bit. And so, some people are like, it really makes me look at what I already know or what's around me differently. So, there's all kinds of reasons. And then, of course, there's that sense of connection. And a lot of people are liking this idea of the human chain because it's around the world. Also, we're all walking in different places, and we're doing it over a period of time. So we actually unintentionally have built up a record of, autumn across the Northern Hemisphere over 6 weeks. I've strayed from the question. I think.
That's fine.
So, you can walk from anywhere, anytime. The idea, there's because it's especially because we're going from Tokyo all the way over to Canada. We're crossing most of the time zones. You can't get people in London and Belgium and France and Tokyo and Canada all together at a civilized waking hour. Normally, if it all went for a walk at the same time, most of you would be walking in dark and cold.
Thank you for, I love the global reach of it. Thank you for sharing that with us. If you're able to put your Eventbrite link into chat, and also your contact, which I know is @tumblingfumbling on Instagram, that gives people a way to get in touch with you. So if you're able to put that into chat, that would be fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us and giving us an insight into the lovely creativity, and just seeing those images from across the world that you showed on that slide was really lovely. So thank you so much for sharing that with us this morning. And we will watch that grow with interest as that second set of postcards becomes created. So thank you so much. That was fantastic. There we go. There's the Eventbrite link that's gone into chat from Amy. Thank you for doing that, Amy. Thank you, Melanie.
Thanks.
Lovely stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, let's just finish off the call this morning. So let me just mention, make your market first of all. So this is, for those of you that weren't around a few years ago, it's a chance for people that are creatives that make things that might sell as Christmas presents, for example, in the run-up in November and particularly in December. We'll start to promote this on social media and also in the newsletters. An opportunity for perhaps 2 artists to have 5 minutes each on these calls on Fridays in the run-up to Christmas, just to talk about their wares, basically use it as a marketplace. Certainly, I was just looking at, I bought this beautiful vase. Let me just unblur myself. It's a beautiful little vase that Katrina Archibald, I hope I've got her name right, made, and in Carlisle, a beautiful bit of ceramics as a direct result of that market. And Amy, I know that you've got something recently as a result of us featuring the pottery in the podcast in Workington, haven't you? Is that right?
Yeah. So I don't know, they might want to come on.
Yeah, this is West
and
House
tell us
Pottery.
about their stuff. Yeah, West House Pottery. So I'd not heard of it before, based in West Cumbria. Obviously I'm involved in CACN, so would be listening to the podcast that Tom did a little while back. If you've not listened to it, I'll put the link in chat. It's a nice episode. But the pottery that they do there is absolutely lovely. It's a really sort of small, limited range of pottery, and they've all got slightly different designs, very handmade. They're all unique and individual. So I've bought a little present for my mum for Christmas because I thought it was absolutely lovely.
Lovely. So we are a very big, wide, enormous echo chamber in the arts and culture sector, but there's no reason why we can't echo chamber to each other about beautiful things that are made in Cumbria that might be lovely things to buy for Christmas or actually any other time of the year. So anyway, the Make Your Market sessions will probably start the last Friday in November through to the week before Christmas in December. So if you are someone who makes stuff that you could sell at Christmas, get in touch with us, hello@cacn.co.uk. We'll line up 5 minutes on a call, and you can just basically splurge us with why we should buy your stuff for Christmas. So I hope that makes sense. We'll publicise it again. We did this a few years ago, and it was quite successful. So we'll do it again this year, and we'll start kicking those sessions off towards the end of November. So that is the plan for Make Your Market. Copyright and Wag It Not, as far as that title is concerned. Right, we're just going to complete the session this morning with just a nod ahead to co-creation and a session that Chris is organising, and Kate might want to chip in as well. But Chris, do you want to tell us about the session that's going to be coming up later towards the end of this year?
Yes, end of this month.
End of this month.
Yeah, if people were at the quarterly, half-yearly, whatever, the big gathering that we had recently in Kendal at the brewery, looking at the whole concept of co-creation, you will have seen Alexis Johnson just towards the end popping up briefly, and she'd been sort of observing and made some comments. She's an extremely experienced co-creator. That's pretty much what she does, and she's writing a PhD thesis about it. And so she's going to do a session about co-creating with communities. And obviously this very much ties in with the new Arts Council approach, the Let's Create agenda, which is all about, rather than just artists delivering from on high, engaging with communities and making lovely stuff happen. So she'll be doing a full day training session on this at RegEd at the end of the month, and you can book your tickets on Eventbrite in the usual way, and they're available through the CACN website. And I'm hoping
the link has just gone into chat for the booking.
Okay, fantastic. Yes, and I'm hoping that possibly Alexis will come on maybe next week and talk a little bit more about it, and she'd be an interesting person to talk to anyway. So I think that would
and does it feel like there's been a demand for that sort of session, Chris?
Yes, well, there's certainly, I think there was, I think it's very much a hot topic in the cultural world generally. I think the CACN event at the brewery, was very well attended, and I think people who maybe didn't know very much about it, which I would count myself among, discovered a bit more about the whole approach, and I think were excited and energized by it. And yes, and tickets are already selling. So yes, somebody mentioned, Mel Anie mentioned Harriet and Rob's creative responses to the environment session. That is now sold out. So make sure you don't miss out on Alexis's co-creation one. I would just say, however, that the Harriet and Rob will be repeating that session sometime fairly early in the new year, date to be confirmed. So if you've missed the boat this time, don't worry, there's going to be another chance.
Great, thank you very much, Chris. And all the information for all these things is always on the website, which is cacn.co.uk, and we try and push stuff out in the newsletter and also on social media as well. There's an account on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. But it's always on the website, which is always changing and dynamic. And Amy does a brilliant job managing the website, so do keep in touch with that. Right. Okay. I think we're done. I think so. Next week, we're going to, very exciting next week. You may have heard of the brand new art gallery opening in Maryport called Shipping Brow Gallery. That opens a week on Saturday, a week tomorrow. They've been working so hard there. They've got an artist in residence there. And next Friday, we're going to get a sneak preview of the Maryport Shipping Brow Gallery. So that is the plan for next Friday. So do join us for that at 9:30 next week. I think we're done. It's a beautiful day in Cumbria. What are we doing sitting on Zoom? We should be out and about enjoying the fresh air and getting some vitamin D in our veins. So thank you very much to Mel Anie and to Russell for this morning, and to everybody else's contributions as well. I hope it's been interesting. Lovely to see you all, and catch up again soon.